Hello everyone, Mimri here. This video is the 2019 version of the important worker nodes. If you don't know how workers and node works, there are plenty of videos on YouTube explaining them. So please watch those before you start the video. Now before we start, I just wanted to mention that I'm not going to name most of the ore and wood nodes because there are way too many of them. And also you can just follow my node links on the screen to find them. However, I will be mentioning excavation nodes and some special nodes, which I think is what everyone really wants to know. Keep in mind that my node links might not be suited for you since I don't do trading or crafting now. However, this would be the most efficient way to link nodes if you purely after the resource nodes. Anyways, let's start at Grana. Now, there's not much to say here. There are only two must-get nodes in Grana, and that is Lake Flunder for Powder of Earth and Tooth Fairy Forest for Trace of Forests. Note that if you link Grana to other cities, you might also want to grab the Strawberry nodes over here. I personally haven't tried this node because it's not worth for me to link here, since I don't do trading, but it should be similar value to the Grape node in terms of money per CP if you already linking Grana to other cities. Next, we go into Juventud. Now, the node here is interesting since it gives many rare resources, but they all cost a lot of CP. So in terms of cost efficiency, Juventud is on kind of the lower side. But if you do have the extra CPs to spend, then here are some important nodes to keep in mind. There are two excavation nodes here that are fairly valuable. The Fountain of Origin gives Trace of Origin, and Shurikan's Necropolis gives Trace of Memory. And lastly, the Pine Timber node in Kemet Lumber Camp is also a decent one to pick up. If this node doesn't cost so much, it would be the best timber node in the game. And yes, I have to mention the only two mithril nodes in the game at Kelk Canyon. Yes, mithril is very valuable, but the amount of mithril produced in these two nodes are simply way too small to make them worth. I have rushed artisan workers on these two nodes as soon as they came out, and I've only ever got like 15 to 20 so far out of the node. I was going to pull both of them out to use the CP somewhere else, but I keep the zinc node because zinc is actually a decent resource. And also I just wanted to know if they would somehow ninja buff the production rate. Now you'll notice that 3 of the nodes are not directly connected to Juventud, and I'm still able to send worker from there. And that is because they are connected through Kelfion, Hydel, and then back to Juventud City. The reason I do this is mainly because I wanted the Garmoth node, and it would actually be more efficient for me to connect them like this. Otherwise, I would disconnect Shura Ruins and Nightcrow Post and connect Morning Fog Post and Harak's Shelter instead. Now let's have a look at Kelfion next. This is pretty much the highest worker income region in the entire game, or at least for me. It has 4 excavation sites and a high concentration of wood nodes. These wood nodes are all valuable because of crate traders and crafters. If you follow my node links, you can find every single wood nodes in the region. The excavation nodes here are Rua Tree Stub for Trace of Forests, Bar Riverhead for Powder of Earth, Menshaw Forest for Trace of Violence, and Barriento Farm for Trace of Forest again. There is a coal node just outside of Kepler, so just send a worker from Kepler on it and transport the item to Kelfion to sell. Moving on to Hydel. Lynch Farm Ruins is still good for Trace of Savagery, and Glitch Ruins is good for Trace of Origin. Of course, there is your famous Honey node, but it's not as good as it used to be because it is easy to get and everyone is using it. I have sent some Hydel workers to Medea and even Juventud because Heidelberg has too many cheap lodgings and too little decent nodes in the region, to the point that even when I send workers to other regions, I still have a lot of spare workers that is doing nothing. I've sent Heidel workers to grab all the wood and excavation nodes in Medea, since it takes the same amount of time or shorter compared to Altanova workers. Also, my pine node in Juventud is occupied by my Heidel workers as well. It saves me storage space since Heidel storage already have pine sap and pine wood in it. Moving on to Velia. Ancient Stone Chamber is for Trace of Earth and Trace of Ascension. This is arguably the best excavation node in the game in my opinion, because it gives two useful traces at once. Also, there are your chicken egg nodes that are actually good now, because you can use chicken meat to make grilled bird meat, which is basically beer. The Great Farm just outside of Olvia is another great node to mention. Just send workers straight from Olvia, similar to the coal node in Kaplan. Many players might have lodging space shortage problem in Velia. However, you should be fine if you get the 2 extra lodging houses from Tuscany farm. Next, in Altanova. The important nodes are Ancient Ruin nodes for Trace of Earth, the Sweet Potato nodes simply because it is the best beer material node in the game, and yes, I send Heidel workers here for that as well. The Stone Tail Wasteland node for Acacia Wood is a special mention because I have never seen this timber being flooded in the market ever since it came out. It is one of the best wood nodes in the game because of this. Also, all nodes in Omar Lava Cave and Abandoned Iron Mine are good, especially the Platinum Zinc nodes. Platinum and Zinc are both highly valued, which makes them top tier nodes in the game. Finally, I will split Valencia into Valencia West and Valencia East because it is easier to explain that way. Valencia West nodes are connected to Altanova and Sand Grain because using workers from those places are 100% better than sending workers directly from Valencia City. The nodes that are worth mentioning here are Crescent Shrine for Titanium and all the Black Crystal nodes from Crescent Mountains, Pilgrim's Haven, and Bayesian Base. There is an excavation node at Pilgrim's Sanctum Humility, but it costs way too much to connect from either Valencia or Sandgrain, so this is the only excavation nodes that you should not be getting. Sandgrain storage used to not be able to send items to anywhere. I'm not sure when they made the change, since I have took a break from BDO for a while, but now you're able to send items to Altanova, which means you can have extra workers to manage here. Valencia East is simple. There are 2 Vandanium nodes and 2 Titanium nodes spread across Gavanya Volcano Zone, Gavanya Coastal Cliff, and Gavanya Great Crater. There is a Vandanium node at Mach Canyon node, but again, the CP required makes it not worth to pick up. I used to do Chrono Helmets, Uria Staff, Grade 3 Reform Stones, and all kinds of other life skill clothes. They are still very profitable and easy to make since most of the materials never really runs out because of my worker empire. However, I stopped doing it now because I simply can't sell fast enough to keep up with the production rate. And often the storage would be full of products because of temporary market crash. As a result, all workers from that city would stop working until I make space in the storage again. I wanted maximum laziness income, so I choose to spend my CP this way. As you can see, with 333 contribution points, all dedicated to resource nodes and lodging, I have a total of 103 artisan workers, but only 76 is actually working. On average, this worker empire increases my storage silver by 20 mil per day, which means this is counted after tax, and it does not include stuff that I can't sell fast, like Trace of Despair. It is great since all I really have to do is have the game running in tray most of the time. It does have one downside though, and that is beer consumption. Right now, my workers drinks around 2,000 beers per day, and you are not going to be able to buy them from the market. Therefore, I need to make them myself. But it's okay because I have a few days per week that I can just cook for the whole day while I work on other stuff. So going this far on Worker Empire might not be for everyone, but if you only focus on those important nodes I mentioned earlier, you can still be getting around 10 mil per day with maybe 1,000 or less beer per day consumed, which is definitely manageable. Now, why doesn't everyone do this, you might ask? This is because you can get at least double or triple the amount of silver by buying these material instead from the market and do crate runs, crafting, or even farming. Now, I have done heavy amount of crafting in the past, so I know that you can get at least 50 mil per day after tax with around half of the amount of workers working on resources compared to the current setup. But the downside of that is you have to pay more attention to the market and change your crafting items accordingly to prevent storage overflow. You would also need to do some processing and gathering every now and then. I decided that it's too much work for me, so I stick with this less profitable but next to zero effort required method. I also mentioned that I did buy all the lodging expansion and a lot of storage expansion. Therefore, I spend less contribution points on those. However, I do have 27 workers that are doing nothing, so if you are a free to play player, you can still have around 60 to maybe 70% of what I have with equal amount of contributions spent. You can also double or triple that amount if you decide to do crafting as well. Note that most of the small towns in each region would have a free worker slot for you to utilize, and if you buy the cash lodging expansion, it will also increase the lodging space in those small towns as well. I won't be explaining crafting because there should be plenty of videos out there teaching you how to do that. This video was originally going to be a lazy passive income guide in general, but the resource node itself is already taking longer than what I was planning, so that will have to wait. I'm going overseas to meet some of my family members, which I almost don't get to see. I'll be back in around 2 to 3 weeks, and the second part of the lazy income video will come after that. Anyways, hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next video.